HI Mystery Recapped here. Today I'm going to explain a history drama movie called Suffragette. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The movie is set in the year 1912 in London. This is a time when women were not permitted to vote in England. They were forced to live in a humiliating situation, with no choice in their jobs or control over their own lives. We then meet one such woman named Maud Watts, who is 24 years old. She works long hours in a laundry factory, where she's constantly at risk of injury or illness, all for a low wage. Her only hope and solace come from her beloved husband, Sonny, and her little son, George. One day Maud is ordered by her boss, Norman, to deliver and pick up some laundry. She is initially reluctant because it's not part of her job, but she has no choice but to agree. Later on the way, Maud becomes distracted when she sees some baby clothes in a shop window. As she gazes at them, several women suddenly appear, hurling rocks at the window and shouting, "Vote for women!" They turn out to be a group of suffragette activists fighting for women's rights. Maud is taken aback when she sees a colleague named Violet among the militants. However, she becomes terrified by the commotion and rushes away from them. Next day at work, Norman approaches Violet and begins scolding her for not doing a good job. He then tries to fire her, but Maud quickly steps in and distracts him by saying that a machine needs to be checked. Later, Violet approaches Maud when they're alone and thanks her for saving her from getting fired. She then introduces Maud to her 12-year-old daughter Maggie, who will be working at the laundry factory alongside them. In the following scene, Alice Houghton, the wife of a member of parliament, appears outside the factory to make an important announcement. She encourages the women to testify before the parliament to fight for their right to vote. Violet agrees without hesitation, as she hopes to make the world a better place for her daughter. She urges Maud to join her or at least listen to her speech, but the latter refuses. Maud insists that smashing windows and yelling in the streets are not respectable actions. When she returns home, she discovers that George is having chest problems, so she takes him to a nearby pharmacy. The pharmacy is run by Edith Ellen, a prominent activist leader in the area who is under close police surveillance. Edith checks George's condition, but refuses to accept payment for the medicine. Later, the police, who are secretly photographing women entering and leaving Edith's pharmacy, take a picture of Maud, then mistakenly assume that she might be an activist as well. The next day, when Maud returns to work, she discovers Norman assaulting Maggie and is shocked. She then intentionally makes a noise, prompting the pervert to finally stop. It turns out that Norman had also assaulted Maud in the past. So the incident brings back disturbing memories for her. As a result, she finally changes her mind about joining the movement. She approaches Violet and tells her that she will listen to her in the parliament, which makes the latter very happy. In the next scene, the big day arrives, when Violet is set to testify about the harsh conditions faced by women. Maud decides to attend as well, which Sonny doesn't like. However, she assures him that she doesn't intend to speak and will only listen to Violet. Upon arriving at the parliament, Maud is shocked to see Violet's face bruised from a beating by her husband. Alice then asserts that Violet won't be heard if she testifies, looking like this, so both women turn to Maud for help. Maud is initially hesitant, but when Alice explains that all she has to do is read from a paper, she eventually agrees. Following this, Maud stands in front of the ministers, but becomes too nervous to speak. To help her open up, they begin asking about her life, and she recounts her tragic past. She shares that her mother also worked in the laundry and passed away when Maud was only 4 years old. She then started working there at the age of 7 and describes how the women are severely underpaid, despite working 3 times as much as the men. When a minister asks if she supports women's suffrage, Maud admits that she'd never really thought about it, as she'd always felt trapped in a life she couldn't escape. However, she confesses that she's beginning to feel that there may be another way to live. The minister sympathizes with her situation and assures her that they will soon learn the outcome of today's hearing. A few days later, a crowd of suffragettes gathers outside the parliament, eager to hear the outcome of the hearing. However, contrary to their expectations, spokesperson announces that the amendment to the law for women's suffrage has been rejected. Day causes the women to scream in rage and cause havoc in the area, but the police eventually subdue them and Maud is arrested, along with Edith and Violet. Later at the police station, Maud is interrogated by an inspector named Steed. She tries to explain that she isn't a suffragette, but the man refuses to believe her and puts her in jail. While imprisoned, the 3 women meet another activist named Emily Davison, who has gone on a hunger strike for her unjust arrest. Scene then cuts to a week later, when the women are finally being released. Maud notices that everyone's family has come to greet them, except for hers, which makes her feel bad and alone. When she returns home, she finds Sunny extremely angry at her. He expresses his shame for the trouble she has caused, so Maud apologizes and promises that she won't do it again. But she will though. A few days later, Violet invites Maud to a secret meeting hosted by Emmeline Pankhurst, the leader of the women's social and political union movement. Maud initially refuses, as she had promised her husband not to engage in such activities again, but eventually changes her mind. Together with Violet and Emily, she then heads to the location where the movement is set to take place. Shortly after, Pankhurst appears at the window and delivers an inspiring speech, urging everyone to keep fighting for their future. However, not long after, the police find out about the gathering and rush to the scene. Women are talking about being human beings again. Pankhurst, who is guarded by her supporters, manages to leave the scene, while Maud and her friends are arrested once again. This time, the cops don't imprison them, but instead drop them off at their homes in a police van. When Maud gets home, she finds Sunny angrily waiting for her. He is furious she humiliated him once again and kicks her out of the house. Maud begs him to let her see George, but Sunny refuses to open the door. With no other option, she goes to ask Violet for help, who manages to arrange a cheap dormitory for her to stay in. Despite all of this chaos, Maud continues to work in the laundry. The police become more watchful as the women's movement gains momentum. Every day one evening, they publish photos of Maud and her friends in a newspaper, officially declaring her a suffragette. This causes all of them to be humiliated by their neighbors and family. When Maud arrives at work, Norman approaches her with the newspaper and fires her from her job, overwhelmed by the anger she has been harboring for so long. Maud explodes and presses a hot iron into his hand. Because of the incident, Maud is arrested once again and taken to the police station. There she is approached by Inspector Steed. He offers her a deal that he will let her off the hook if she becomes a police spy, and informs him about the planning and movements of the suffragettes. Maud flatly refuses the inspector's offer, but he provides her with his contact information in case she changes her mind, and then releases her in the following days. The women decide to take more drastic measures to attract public attention. During this time, Maud sleeps in an abandoned church, which serves as a secret base for the activists. She also sometimes sneaks out to see George, who feels lonely as a young boy without his mother. The women then begin to blow up post boxes, it's a segue, and cut telephone lines to paralyze communications in London. The police are convinced that activists are behind these actions, but are unable to find any evidence to support their claims. One day, Edith decides to execute a highly risky plan to blow up the Parliament Villa. However, Violet objects, arguing that they're taking things too far. Maud tries to persuade her, but Violet rubs her stomach and reveals that she is pregnant. Upon hearing this, Maud hugs her tightly, not too tightly I hope, and urges her to take care of herself and the child. In the following scene, Maud returns home since it is George's birthday. She knocks on the door, but her shocked Sunny refuses to let her in. Maud then forcibly enters and discovers a couple inside who have come to adopt her son. She begs Sunny not to go through with it, but he reveals that he is tired of raising a child and dealing with the public backlash caused by her activism. Hearing this, Maud begins crying and hands George his birthday present. She then urges him never to forget his mother, and gives him a tight hug. After this, Maud has nothing more to lose and becomes increasingly radical. She becomes more involved in the militant actions of the movement and participates in various destructive activities. One day, Edith makes a homemade man together with Maud and Emily. They end up blowing up the Parliament. This incident creates a huge scandal, resulting in the arrest of the three women. In the following days, the police tortured the activists, forced them to confess, but it doesn't work. The women keep their mouths shut and begin a fast in protest of their arrest. On the 5th day of the fast, they're forced to eat through a tube in their nose. All men eat and soup. They violently resist this treatment. When Inspector Steed notices what is happening, he feels very sorry for the poor women. He then reports this barbaric treatment to his superiors, and finally makes it up after this Maud. Edith and Emily continue to refuse to confess, so they are ultimately released due to insufficient evidence. Several days later, police raid the movement's headquarters and arrest 6 activists, frustrated that their work is not gaining much attention. Edith comes up with a bold plan to appeal directly to the King. They decide to attend the Epsom Derby horse race, which will be attended by King George V. They plan to stand in front of the cameras with signs and banners, advocating for the right to vote for women. The group then spends days preparing for the event, making flags and banners to support their cause. After some time, their big day finally arrives. The women are incredibly enthusiastic about the event. However, when Edith goes to a pantry room in her house, her husband takes this opportunity to lock her inside. She has become too weak from starving in prison, so he is genuinely worried about her health. Although he has been understanding and supportive of his wife's activities, up until now he doesn't want to let her die. When Edith fails to show up at the appointed place, Maud and Emily head to the race track alone. Meanwhile, Inspector Steed arrives at the hideout church and finds a newspaper about the Derby race. He realizes what is happening and decides to go there to stop the activists. The scene then cuts to the race course, which is crowded with spectators. Maud and Emily spot the king and try to enter the paddock, but unfortunately they are denied entry by a security guard. They don't make it to the royal sector, but Emily refuses to give up on their plan. Next, she checks the location of the king's stand and the media cameras, then pushes her way through the crowd. Maud becomes very worried for her friend and chases after her. Soon the race begins, and Inspector Steed arrives at the scene looking for the activists. In an unexpected turn of events, Emily moves to the front of the course, where the king can see her clearly, and leaps in front of a horse racing at full speed. She shouts at Maud not to give up, and to keep fighting for their rights. Unfortunately, the horse knocks her off her feet, and she soon passes away while holding a flag that says, "Women's right to vote." Maud is devastated by the loss of her friend, and leaves the place in tears. Soon as she arrives in London, she heads to the laundry factory, where Maggie is still working very hard to support the family. She then rescues the little girl and takes her to the house of Alice Houghton. She can work safely in the final scene. We learned that the movie was based on true events in Britain. Emily's death was widely covered in the newspapers, bringing international attention to the fight for women's suffrage. Thousands of women attended her funeral carrying white lily, and public opinion began to change. Maud and others continued their activism, and in 1918, women over the age of 30 were granted limited suffrage in Britain. The activist struggle eventually paid off in 1928 when equal suffrage was granted in the nation. After that, other countries granted women's suffrage one after the other, with Britain becoming a pioneer in recognizing women's social status. Roll up. Thank you for watching.